Let's find out what's happening in the markets at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Nompumelelo Siziba is standing by. Over to you, Nompumelelo.
Thanks very much, Nzinga. Well, we see that the all-share index is in positive territory. Also, European markets also up. Meanwhile, the local currency has surged ahead relative to the close to the New York close, on Friday. It closed at around 12.17 vis-a-vis the dollar and has reached as firm a level as 12.03 against the greenback. So doing nicely there. I suspect events over the weekend that were confidence boosting, that is the change of the Eskom board, may have something to do with the way that the market's reacting, giving investors some confidence about the way that government is going to be treating SOEs and policy in general going forward. And then we see that unfortunately for Eskom, they still have challenges, obviously. They have to release their financial results for the 6 months ended September last year. They have to do that by the end of this month. If they don't, the JSE has said that they will stop them or halt their trade in bonds. Now, this is very negative because they won't be able to borrow any further money, and it will put them in a very difficult position. They have to raise about 20 billion rand by the end of February. So hopefully the board can do enough to ensure that Eskom remains a company that can actually be viable and those results get released in time. Otherwise, there will be consequences. Steinhoff facing a similar threat from the JSE. The JSE has said that if they don't release their financial results by the end of February, again, they may halt their bonds. Similar consequences if that happens. Let's take a look at the indicators. Well, I'm joined by Gary Boyson. He's a portfolio manager at Rand Swiss. Thanks for joining us, sir, as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Good stuff. Let's start with the US first. That dreaded event, the US government shutdown, it happened on Friday. The Democrats and Republicans couldn't agree. In fact, some Republicans as well couldn't agree on issues around immigration and border controls. And this is what held things back. What are the implications of the government shutdown and how has this played out in markets like the currency and equities markets?
So far, we've seen a very subdued reaction in equity and currency markets, and I think that's really the market pricing, and that we could see a resolution fairly quickly. And also, this is not unprecedented. We saw government shut down in 2013. The government shut for 16 days there, and the estimated cost was around $2 billion. So it does have a significant impact. A lot of U.S. non-critical workers, at least, will not be going to work and will not get paid. So I mean, this has a severe impact on the U.S. economy. We do, however, have a vote this evening. So I think it's going to be 7 o'clock our time, which is about 12 o'clock in New York. So it does mean that we're going to have a full government shutdown for at least one day. But I think the markets are fairly optimistic that there is going to be some sort of resolution, because this is not a discussion around whether or not they can raise the debt ceiling or anything like this. This was just missing a deadline on Friday where they needed to pass a bill. That bill would have only extended federal funding until the middle of next month anyway. So it just looks like a little bit of politicking between the Republicans and Democrats. Exactly as you say, it's about immigration. It's about how they're going to pay for increased border security, and it's about increased military spending, as well as I suppose the deportation of I think it's about 700,000 illegal immigrants, which the Democrats are already fighting to stay in the U.S. So. Yeah, just politicking, and U.S. taxpayers and the U.S. economy going to suffer for it.
Unfortunately. And then we look at the oil picture. Saudi Arabia hinting that the current OPEC oil output curb is likely to be extended beyond 2018. This seems to be elevating the oil price, keeping it just a couple of dollars short of $70 a barrel. What do you see as the new price range normal going forward? Is it going to be 60 to 70, 70 to 80? And, you know, what are the implications of this?
They always say it's easy to forecast the oil price. You just take the current price plus 10 minus 10, that's your range. And but I mean, seriously, looking at some of the, you know, the estimates now, we for the first time in a long time starting to see, you know, fundamental, you know, oil analytic companies coming out with forecasts of back at $100 a barrel, which I think no one would have predicted that. Yes, that's all the way out in 2019, but it's certainly the first time that we've seen those sorts of predictions in a while, which I think certainly means that we're going to have maybe elevated oil prices for longer. Now, part of that is also the US dollar weakness. So obviously, you know, you always talk about oil price $70 a barrel, oil price in dollars rather than considering it in you know, oil price in rand or sterling or other currencies. But so the dollar depreciation that we've gone through has helped to keep that number fairly elevated, that $70 a barrel. But also at the same time, we think, you know, with the extension of the OPEC cuts, that might also be, you know, a slight misreading of the market by OPEC. So if you look at something like the International Energy Agency, they're seeing that demand is actually going to get above 100,000 barrels a day. And that is for the first time in a long time as well. So we're seeing a very robust demand picture on the oil side, which you know, perhaps the OPEC countries are not taking into account. You also look at World Bank forecasts, and you're seeing that they're increasing their GDP growth forecast for the globe to around 3.1%. So you're seeing you know, I think there's definitely going to be oil demand, and if we still see the pulling back of supply by the OPEC countries, you know, I think you're going to see higher oil prices. That will be offset for South Africa, though, because we're getting the stronger currency at the same time.
Indeed, but how long will it last? Let's see about that. And then, of course, in relation to that firming rand, the past weekend was a busy and confidence-boosting one, I suppose, when we saw the overhaul of the Eskom board and leadership there. Now, of course, it still has challenges. Will this board be able to turn things around quickly enough for them to meet this 31st of January deadline to present their financials for investors on the bond market? And if not, the JSE might shut them down. What does that mean?
Yeah, so I mean, they're looking at you know, suspending the bonds. Now that's I mean that will have enormous consequences, and you know, really I think. If you look at, I mean, we kind of understand the problems at Eskom, and it has been for a long time. It's one of the state-owned entities that has been run very, very inefficiently. We've seen, you know, corruption. We've seen, you know, a headcount that is too high, salaries that are too high, and just generally what you would expect from you know, a government-run organization. I mean, this is not unique to South Africa. You know, when you don't have kind of the market pricing pressures that private companies have, you do tend to get inefficiency. It's just what happens. Now, seeing the change of the board, whether this is going to be enough now to sort out a company that, you know, for all intents and purposes, you know, if they're not releasing financial results, could technically be insolvent as well. I mean, there are real concerns around Eskom at the moment. Yeah, will you know, the change of a board convince lenders that you should come back and lend at reasonable rates to Eskom, and that they have a good chance of you know, recouping their investment? I don't know. It's difficult. I mean, there are big problems at Eskom. I think you know, the changing of the board is a step in the right direction. Whether that's going to be enough to convince you know, investors to buy Eskom bonds, and obviously, you know, whether they're going to release their results or not will depend. And I think they've got a 1-month extension from the end of this month, so it'll be the end of February that they have to release. But yeah, we'll see. Let's hope they make it by the deadline. Very
succinctly, why have we seen the rand appreciate by 10 cents from Friday?
Yeah, so it could be. Yeah, I think you've got international and domestic factors. I think you know, the Eskom situation is massive for the country. I mean, if you do see, you know, the suspension of Eskom bonds, I mean, you could almost guarantee that we would you know, see our you know, triple junk sovereign credit downgrade, because essentially the South African taxpayer stands as the lender of last resort to Eskom. So I think with the changing of the board, that's certainly just, you know, fed into the optimism that, you know, things are starting to turn at least in the right direction. Whether it's going to be soon enough, you know, I think markets also they are forward looking, and they generally do give people you know, companies the benefit of the doubt. So hopefully that was enough to strengthen our currency a little bit and people to get a little bit more optimistic. On the other hand, the currency pair is you know, two sides. So if you're looking at the rand dollar, then you've also got the dollar. I mean, the government shutdown in the US certainly did help the dollar to slide a little bit further, and that helped to boost us, relatively speaking.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you for your insights, as always, Gary. Well, Gary's saying that it's a bit of international and local factors putting the rand on a firmer footing. After a short break, Nzinga has more business news for you.